What's going on? It's your boy Wally, aka Mr. Music is My Business. You are back on Behind the Grind series. I got my special guest host and an amazing guest today. Tell me, you all right, what you got going on?
Absolutely. Just introduce myself again.
Yeah, intro yourself. We're back.
New segment.
We're back in it.
We're back. Randy Chertkow, co-author of a book called Making Money with Music. It's actually my fourth book about the music business. And I'm just passionate about finding out different ways to make money with music, basically making the music business work. And speaking of that, I met one of the most amazing people in that space, Jennifer Morelli, who I'm very pleased to introduce.
Everyone. Hello.
And thank you so much for coming up to the studio here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm really excited to be here.
And you've been in this business for an awful long time, right?
Over 25 years.
25 years of, can you talk about what it is that you do on sponsorship and brand partnership consulting?
Sure. I work, in the past 25 years, I've worked in the media and entertainment business. And what I do is it's kind of a three-pronged approach. I work with companies, I work with brands, and then I can also work with a group like artists, and helping them secure sponsorships, build out a strategy, and then drive revenue as a result of that, which is what you really want sponsorships to do for you.
Absolutely. So, in a lot of ways, I just find it interesting because if you think of every festival we've ever been to that's a music festival, for those of us in the music business, it almost becomes invisible if you're not paying attention. But all those brands that you see on the banners, we were just at Riot Fest. We had press passes. It was a lot of fun. It was a blast. We saw Public Enemy. We saw a lot of great
Cypress
Hill. And even the stages were named. And I've seen some of the work that you've done. You've put together decks and everything. Can you talk a little bit about what it takes to fund something like this? What are brands interested in to actually filter money back to the artists and back to the music business?
Essentially, all brands are looking for connection. So you want to connect brands to fans, and then fans back to the brands, right? So when brands are looking for these kind of opportunities, first of all, they want to make sure it's a great match. So their product and that audience needs to be a really good, strong match for them, right? And then the reason that brands come in and sponsor festivals is that they really want that in-person connection. They want to have an emotional engagement. They have traditional advertising. They can be on the radio, they can be on TV doing 15 or 30-second spots. But when you can complement all your marketing with in-person engagement, you really round it all out. They call that 360-degree marketing by doing all of that and bringing that full circle. And we're finding more and more that it's called experiential, when brands go on site and actually are working directly with consumers. We're finding more and more that experiential is creating even better results than, in some cases, traditional advertising, because you have to create that emotional connection. It's a real opportunity for a brand.
That's like the engagement. Is that what like
exactly.
T-Mobile has like a stand in somewhere and they're like coming up to you like, here, take this football or take something home with you.
That's right. And earlier, in experiential marketing, you'd have a table and two chairs and you'd have a team of people working out there handing out stuff, right? Yeah, and now what you really want to do is you want to create an experience. You want to create something that's going to leave a feeling, leave an impression with consumers. One of my favorite lines to use when I help brands to develop their idea for on-site activation is, would anybody notice if you got up and left? And so, that really makes someone think about, okay, then can't just sit there with a table and two chairs. We've got to really do something, because people are gonna, if we got up and left, are they really gonna notice, or would they care? And what you really want to do, the brands that do it right, they enhance the attendees' experience. That's what resonates the most with attendees. If you can do something that enhances attendees' experience, it has a 10 times more chance of being what we call sticky. It's gonna stick with that consumer.
That makes a lot of sense. And just to bring it home for the artists that are out there, because they're not always used to wearing the business hat.
Right.
So, like, you've spoken a lot of business language about making brands happy, which is not the way that most people think. But part of the reason why you want to partner with it is because there's real income that comes from this, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, brand partnerships is a real business model, and artists and labels and artist management, they're now creating their own staffing and positions for this, for artist teams and for labels and management teams, that someone is truly just in charge of managing brand partnerships and going out there and helping to prospect and seek those different companies that would be a good match for their artist. And so there's real opportunity here. And even if you don't have a big team and all of that as an artist, you can start on your own. And you start with your own personal roster of, what do I use? What do I like? What places do I visit? What do I go buy? Those are really great places for you to start. And in finding a way to approach those businesses as, do they want to partner with you? And most likely, if you're using their product, all of your fans are using the product as well.
Brilliant.
Right?
Yes.
And so then if you can find a way to approach that company or that business and say, hey, if you want to come on as a investor or an investing partner, a funding sponsor, if you will, and you'll have the opportunity to be in front of X amount of fans, and here are all the ways I'm going to help market your business through my promotional assets that I have.
Is that the biggest mistake people make? They don't really. I know it was something I didn't recognize all the outlets I had, and kind of like you don't recognize your own gifts, that what you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's super common, and I think not only as an artist, but I think it's also really common even as an event or a property, we like to call it. A lot of times people just think, well, I'll just put a logo up here and that's the way to do it. But really, it's a really viable business model. It's a great way to look for opportunities to drive revenue for your own personal property that you have. And every single piece of marketing you're doing as an artist, every flyer you're putting out there, every social post, all of that can be monetized. You just have to take a look at every single thing. If you've got a team and you're sitting down saying, okay, how are we going to promote this show? How am I going to promote this song? And you're making a list of all the ways you're going to push that marketing out. There is an opportunity on every single piece of collateral that a partner can have presence on that in some way, shape, or form.
Can you
And you
explain
can
what
charge
collateral
for that.
means? 'Cause for the artists that are just getting involved in the language.
Well, you've got websites, you've got social posts, you've got flyers. What are you doing to promote your show that's coming up? Inside the venue, right? You've got all kinds of opportunities at the place that you're actually performing. The venue that you're actually performing at probably has their own marketing. They probably have their own email database that they're pushing out, to the people that have signed up to receive a newsletter. All of those, we call those assets. I always just say to someone, list all the things. That's like a line I like to use. What are all the things? And you want to think about it from, what do you have from your own marketing assets? But then think about it from the consumer journey. From the minute they hear you have a show coming, what are all the different ways that they're hearing that? The venue is doing something for you, right? And then what are all the other pieces? Is there a promoter? What's that promoter doing? Every extension possible, you have to think about what can I monetize? How can I monetize every possible piece? You'll look at a show very differently from here on out.
That's funny because you're doing a show, they're hoping to generate income at the end, but you're missing a lot of pieces. I know I'm guilty of it. I've done it because you're so busy. I think that's why you need a sponsor expert, because you're so busy, like doing the operations of it, the gears to make it happen, that you don't actually get to spot the opportunity.
Yes.
And it's not just spotting. You can say, oh yeah, I need a sponsor, but you need somebody that's actively engaged in that.
If
and
you
that
say,
does that.
you can get a sponsor, but then you have to say, okay, well, what do they get?
Correct.
And what they get is you go to someone in the operations camp and say, where are all the ways that I can weave a sponsor into anything that we're doing? person in the ops side is going to be able to say, what about this? What about this? I'm doing this, I'm doing that, because sometimes the person on this side doesn't know all the things that you're doing.
Right.
But all of those can be, nice way, hijacked.
Right.
And, integrated with a sponsor logo, sponsorship opportunity.
So what do you think the biggest mistake is? It not knowing your assets? Really,
Not
really?
knowing your assets. 100%.
So
That's
the
what it
place to
is.
start, is to
Yeah.
list everything that you have.
All the things.
And from the point of view of a sponsor who you're trying to get them to basically give you money, and I can tell you, having written Making Money with Music, having researched literally money and music for the last over 10 years, it's been about 10, 12 years I've been intensely researching this. This is one of the missing pieces. We're used to getting money from basically show revenue, people are buying tickets, you get a cut of the tickets, that's good. But the point is, the backdrop behind your stage is something that brands that want to associate with.
Yes.
This is why I had my mind blown multiple times when we talked about this. I started to realize every piece of the stage, your website, even your tickets,
It's real estate.
it's real estate that you can use. And I want to emphasize something, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, which is that I think that, especially as you're starting out as an artist, you're probably used to the probably inauthentic side of things, where it's like, okay, there's a bank and there's a cellular company. That's not what you think of when you're an artist. The truth is, there's a lot of local brands that you might be able to do that's very authentic to what and who you are.
Absolutely.
And I'm wondering if you can speak to that. How do you find the ones? You talked about it earlier a little bit.
Well, that's why I say make a list of everything you're using, everything you're buying. What are you...
Hennessy, I need y'all to hit my
But
line.
that's true.
Hit the line up,
But
get
that
your
would
grind
be a
up.
great partner.
Yes.
No question.
No.
That would be a
Yes.
great partner. And every category possible. Personal care, liquor, spirits, water, energy drinks. Where do you eat?
Right.
Right? Where do you get your groceries? All of those are really great targets and to put on your list to go have a conversation with about seeing if they would be willing to come in as a sponsor or as a partner in your show. And then you would want to have idea though before you would approach that particular business is have a list. What are all the things that they can be part of? And you can talk to them about real assets and say, look, if you come on as a partner, here are all the ways I'm going to promote and market your business. That's why they're in it. The brands are going to come and be a part of it because number one, they want to be aligned with you because their brands will come in and be part of an artist because guess what? They get to borrow all the equity you've already earned with all your fans. They don't have to start from scratch. Right? And so you as an artist, you've built up a fan base. You have equity with these fans. You say something to your fans, they're going to probably go out and buy it. Or they're going to really consider it. You have influence. You are an influencer. An artist is an influencer without question. Right? So a brand, a business is going to come on and sponsor because they know you have all this built up equity. They get to fast track.
Yes. They get to feed off it.
Exactly.
They didn't
That's
have to
100% why they're doing it.
Right.
They get to fast track and be part of that and be aligned. And then through that, they're going to get access to your fans and create this perception, right? That there's a perceived connection.
Right.
And so, they get to fast track to get access. And so, but you also want it to be a smart connection. What you don't want is you won't want a business that connects and then the fans are going, that doesn't make any sense. Why is he or she aligned with that? That's what you don't want.
Right.
You want people nodding your head going, oh man, that makes so much sense. That's so cool that brand is part of this. And just knowing all the different ways. So that's number one is they want access. They want connection point. But number two, they're also in it for the promotion and marketing. There's extra promotion and marketing for them as a sponsor of your event. So that's why you want to have at the ready, what are all the things that they are going to get as a sponsor? You're going to be able to say, look, I'm just throwing out a number, let's just pretend. For $2,500, you come on as a sponsor for XYZ show or maybe a series of shows or whatever it might be. As a result of that investment, you're going to get included in all these things.
Right.
And also the other piece of it is content. You as artists, you're creating and producing content, right? So, you've got show content, you've got sound check content, all kinds of content, and you're putting that out on social media, likely post-show. The sponsor can be included in that. There
more
can be
revenue.
a pre-roll.
Yeah, more
right
revenue.
there. So the more you have is the more money you can ask for.
I think where somebody like where you're very valuable and the expert is this is I can read a book about pretty much anything. I can read a book about cooking, doesn't mean I'm gonna be a cook.
Right.
And there's a lot of books. I mean, we got a few,
Right.
right?
Right.
But the reason you hire an expert is that you want it done right and you want it done the first time.
Yes.
And I think that's why it's important because I'm big on presentation. So I may know my assets. I may go home tonight and make a list, right? But I need Jen to help me present
How you
them
package
in the
it.
right.
Yeah.
That's where the money is because I
Yeah.
realized that from talking to you on the phone and and chopping it up, I was like, all right, even if you have a lot of businesses have these things and they might go to it and blow it because they don't really know the strength of what they have.
Right.
And then it's got to be presented and packaged the right way.
Correct.
And I always
Yeah.
tell Randy, like, package it like you would sign off on it if you were on the
Yeah.
other side.
Right.
And that's, and
It matters.
It does.
It matters.
That's where you make your
and that's
money.
how businesses make decisions. They're business people.
Yes.
And they're making a decision based on a pool of money that they have available, and they're deciding who they're going to give it to. And they're going to give it to the person that looks like they have their what together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the bottom line.
And you can save a lot of time by hiring
Right.
Jen and get you an expert, a sponsorship expert,
Yeah.
because you already know the presentation.
Right.
You know what they're looking for,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And more importantly,
Yeah.
you know how to drag out of the business
Right.
owner, like, what do you mean you don't got the list of assets? Like,
Right.
all right, let's talk it through. I mean, you did
Yeah.
it to me, right?
Yeah.
So I was able to remind myself, like, oh, we got this. I forgot about suburban stuff that we had for years that I was like, oh yeah, we did have that. So I think that's where it's important to have that relationship because you talk it out. You're
Right.
not going to get that from a book.
No.
You're not going to get it from a YouTube video.
And a lot
That's
of times-
that's very important.
That's right. And a lot of times too, a person can bounce stuff off of you because I could say, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? Because you'll tell me one asset you have, and then I bet you I can create 5 more out of that one asset.
Yeah,
She can.
she did. Yeah, she did.
It was amazing actually. I continue to have my mind blown, Jennifer, by what you do and your work, because every time I talk to you, you come up with like 10 new things and ways to basically get more out of the thing that I'm already doing, and again, make the partnership authentic. You also told me something. This was another mind blowing moment, and I hope you can expand on this. Where not only can they give you money because they want to get promotion, but then they in turn promote it itself and make it big.
Yeah, they have all their own marketing collateral as well. So as part of a true partnership is reciprocal, right?
Right.
And it's not just one way and one-sided. So as a result of that partnership, you're going to want to ask them, what are all your marketing assets and collateral that you can utilize to help the artist get promoted with that, and all those different assets that they have. So they're in their own marketing machine on their own, and then you really want to ask, now let's talk about collectively, what are all the things that we have together
Like
as a partner?
Their socials, for
Yeah, their
example.
socials, their newsletters, what are they pushing out? Also to their own employees, right? Like, what are all the different ways that they can use their assets to help promote your event or you as an artist?
See, that just
What would you tell a small business or like an independent artist or band that's starting up and they think, why would they sponsor me or I'm too small? What would you tell them? Somebody that is not, that really doesn't think like they got a shot at even pitching for a sponsor or that they would land one. What's some advice you would give them?
You got to try, is what I would say. You have to try, and you can't ever be too small if you haven't even asked for $1. And
Right.
so get out there. Even if you got $200, it's $200 more than you had yesterday,
Right.
right? And so you have to start somewhere, and maybe when you go and you sit down and you look at it, you're like, we really don't have that much from an asset base or an inventory or like a marketing base. Well, then that will tell you to start putting some stuff together.
Right.
You got to build it.
They create the assets.
No.
You got to create it,
that
right?
I
And so
have.
that'll help you really determine do I have enough sticky stuff? And that's what you want to find out.
That's where I have a couple ideas that can help out. I actually looked into this part of it. The good news is, even if you're just starting out as an artist and you're out there and you have a show, I guarantee that your fans are going to be hungry afterwards and they want some pizza. So you can always hit up your local pizza place, and you always have something on the stage you can put their logo up on. And right away, you actually have something to work with when it just comes to a live show. It's really possible to start these partnerships really early on, and as you grow, they love it because they grow too. It really starts from starting out with what's your arm's reach. And part of what Jennifer is talking about, just to be very clear, is that if your dreams stop at where you are today, guess what? You're not going to go too far. It's something that you talk about better than just...
I never had a dream I could afford.
Yeah, you can't have dreaming. So what Jennifer is talking about actually is something that you could start out with, but then grow.
Absolutely. It's only going to grow as your own portfolio grows, right? As your performance grows, as your suite of product that you have, your songs, your albums, your performances, all of it. The more you have is the more you can ask for.
And then at some point you might have a team member that's just doing it, because I mean, I know that you probably can't speak to the specifics because you've been in the industry, but you've been in the role that you talked about. Did that basically form a significant part of their income as what the result of your work, would you say?
Oh, I would absolutely. I mean, you know, when brand partnerships, it is a huge business right now. If you look at any top artist right now, you will find that they have a brand partnership with somebody, without question.
Yeah, I mean, look at Jordan. He made all his money from not playing basketball.
Yeah, he was the start of all of it.
Yeah,
honestly,
it was like shoes.
Really, yeah. And you look at every major touring artist out there right now, they have brand partnerships. And sometimes it's subtle and sometimes it's really overt.
Smack in front of you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And there's good and bad in that. But, you know,
But
even
they both pay. They both pay.
Yeah,
They're good.
right. And if you look at the Grammys, there's tons of corporate sponsors.
Yes.
And you look at they're serving liquors, you know, behind
They gave
the
you
bar.
the gift bag. They would send a list, or if you want to get in
they're serving,
the
you know, a
brochure.
glass of champagne to
Yes.
everybody on the red carpet. That's a partnership. Somebody's paying to have that kind of presence in front of consumers.
So at some point it becomes a major part of their business. So it sounds like it's really important to start out that way, even if you're just getting something, and then grow it over time. It will become a significant part of your income. That's something that, which is why I think this is such an important topic for Behind the Grind and everything else. Is
How to do
start
it.
out.
It exists, right? It's got to start. We got to start somewhere.
That's what I say. You got to start somewhere. And even if you start the process and you realize I don't really have much, find something and then continue to start to build it. You know, you got a stage, so there's some presence there. You know.
So when do I call Jen? When is it? When do I need an expert? Is it as I'm starting? Is it like obviously when I got the money, right?
Yeah.
But when do I contact you? Like, when is a good time to should I get a consult in the beginning and say, hey, this is my idea? Should I, you know, what do you advise somebody that says, hey, you know what, I'm an event producer, I own a business, I have a restaurant, I'm an artist, and I want to get sponsorship. When's a good time to contact you and find out?
I think it's a good time when you feel like you feel like you know what you have, right? Because my first question is going to be, what do you have? Tell me everything you have. What are all your assets? And then I'm going to be able to tell you what it's worth, right? And so a good time to call is when you feel like you've got a good base, where you feel like you have something you may not even know how to present it. You may not even know what all you have, but you have to take a look and try to make an inventory listing. And you know, a lot of it initially, you'll probably do a lot of it on your own. Because you know, it just depends if you want to pay somebody when you're just getting started out to do that, you know. But my advice, if you're just getting out there and starting to do that, make a list and find out what you have.
I mean, and nowadays it's honestly like we mentioned stage twice, so I got to touch it. Like, we actually had to print the banners, the vinyl banners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had to show up early. and hang them.
That's what most
and
people that are getting started, you do.
Everybody had to do it, but now I'm saying now you can cheat. It's digital.
Yeah.
You can just put together an image.
For sure.
And just slap it up there. So really, it doesn't even take the huge investment anymore to create them a slideshow and give them
all of that. There's, you just think of things, okay, what isn't going to cost me money and what would cost me money? Start somewhere.
What do you feel is like been the biggest advancements in sponsorship? What's in like maybe the last decade? What's been like the biggest advancements? And what is there any sponsorship or any partnership you've seen, in general you felt was like a really good fit? Like, hey, that was great that those two got together.
Oh my gosh. Well, I will tell you, I think the biggest thing in sponsorship is this is not necessarily tied to this, but look at sports. It is just absolutely loaded, right? Sponsorship is very, very prominent in the music space. But now they are also just exploding into sports space. They're getting into everything. I mean, the biggest thing about sponsorship is understanding that aligning with an artist or aligning with a sports team or aligning with a festival gets them fast-tracked right there and can make them really cool very quick. Right? They may not be really cool, but if they align with somebody really cool, then that's an instant perception that they all of a sudden pick up. Yeah.
They got the juice.
Yeah, it matters.
Sauce,
that's why they sponsor, because they want to be able to get some of that vibe back at them.
And you got to think about the money thing. Either you spend a few $1,000s or tens of $1,000s now and get on right away, or you're gonna spend a little bit and it's gonna take you many years to get there.
Yeah, right. It's like, maybe an example might be Celsius energy drink, right? They started, we started working with them a few years ago. They were just real grassroots energy drink just getting started. Nobody knew who they were. Then they started attaching themselves to social media influencers, and then that was probably one of the most successful things I've seen them do. And slowly over time, it just really became its own viral animal and helped with their reach. But then they started sponsoring athletes, sponsoring artists. That only just expanded it even more. And then they went sponsoring festivals. So they started small and just kept going.
So social media has definitely had an impact.
It's a big, 100%. It's got a big impact. Yeah, content. Branded content is king.
There's one thing I wanted to bring up again, because it was another time you blew my mind, and I'm hoping you can expand on it a little bit. But one of the things that you talked about that just was so brilliant to me is you were saying, what's similar? What's similar to you already? Who's already being a sponsor in your space? If you're an artist, who's being a sponsor to other hip-hop artists? If you're a hip-hop artist?
Shop your competition. That's where I start. If I know that I'm wanting to go and prospect for a certain type of festival or for a certain venue, I first find out, okay, what similar festivals, who are their sponsors? I start with that. If they're already active in the sponsorship space, you're already way ahead of the game.
You're not trying to convince
anybody. You're not trying to
anybody.
convince somebody. At this point, they already know the value of a partnership. They know the value of a sponsorship. So do your research on other artists or other festivals or other venues, anything that's similar to what you're doing. Find out who's sponsoring their stuff, because that's your first target list to go after.
So if they were doing it on their own, they know their assets, they found somebody that's kind of similar. What do you say to that person? What's the best way to make their first approach?
Put it on paper, because you're gonna, when you go and you want to approach the business owner or somebody who would be in charge of buying that partnership, right? And you want to find out who is the person that makes the decisions around sponsorship or partnership. That's what you want to know when you pick up the phone and call.
Randy's pro tip was never take a no from someone that can't give you yes.
That's right.
You got to get to the decision
That's
maker,
right.
Yep. You got to find out who's the one that signs the checks and says, yeah, let's do this. And so, you want to find that out, but also then you want to have, I always say to have, a sizzle sheet. What's your sizzle sheet? Your sizzle sheet is, who you are as an artist, what's your bio, what is, give me your story, and then you want to have a little blurb in there is why should they sponsor you. A sponsor, you have to answer the question, why should I sponsor you? You have to have that answered in your collateral somewhere. It's got to be pretty broad because you can't customize it yet if you haven't met with the sponsor, but you want to first do a piece on here's who I am, here's why you would want to sponsor me, here's why it would make sense. You want to start with the fact
And
that
here's what you get too, right?
Then the third thing is here's what you get by
Right.
doing so, and then you've got your investment at the bottom of what you want to ask for, and so they want to know. This makes sense to me. You want to include stats in there, or not necessarily stats, but who your audience is, right? Like you start, checking boxes for them. They're going to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like who you are and why you should sponsor me is you have to answer those questions. You've got the audience that matches their depth, who they want as customers. Like what are all those things? Do your research on the client. Who's their target customer? What are they doing in their own marketing right now? And does it make sense for what you want to offer them? Like, know what they're doing right now when you approach them.
So is it, I think we asked earlier, is it the assets? What's the hardest thing about your job when taking on a new client?
Expectations.
Okay, let's talk about that.
So
if I have 800 followers, you're not going to give me a $500,000 endorsement?
Right. I think expectations on both sides, right? Like a lot of times people get out there and think, oh God, I'm going to go and ask for all this kind of money. You're only as good as the amount of assets that you have, but there's also value. And so and opportunity, like a lot of times brands are really excited to get in on the ground floor with an artist because they know that if that artist starts taking off, everybody's going to be coming at them, right? And so if you're that one brand that got there in the beginning, there's some loyalty there, and so you want to be a part of that. But managing expectations, in the beginning, just get some money. You won't be able to maybe get everything you want, but get some because it's going to start somewhere. But then on the other side is managing expectations with the client is, make sure everybody understands, is this a 5,000 seat venue? Is it a 500 seat venue? And, what kind of engagement should a sponsor expect? And all of that. You just want to manage expectations.
Now, is that stuff that you should suggest and say, hey, we've got vendor space and we have this too?
Yeah.
Okay, right. So that's something you want to come and offer as an offering.
Absolutely. You want to talk about all those things. You've got the marketing, but also then with the venue, if you're performing at the venue, what do you have access to be able to include in your sponsor package? Can you include the fact, would the venue be okay if you set up? And most often they are. It's just a matter when you are working with the venue and signing a contract, ask for stuff.
See, I want to ask you a question about the most expensive thing, and that's time. And I've seen a lot of people pull things together. So I just want you to talk about realistic expectations, or if I have a birthday party that I'm throwing for Urban Grind, I can't start 3 weeks before the birthday party.
I would say that your super huge sponsorships, when you're looking at the real premiere, like you are working those deals 12 months out.
12 months out
For sure.
See that? 12 months. It can't be something that's
Those are the big deals. But I would say any your smaller deals, you need to be at like 3 months for sure. Minimum. And I always say 6 to 9.
The more room you give yourself, right?
Right. And also the more assets you have. By the time you get to 3 weeks, you've probably burned through some of your assets. And you can't include a sponsor in those. So now you've just had your value walk out the door.
I think it's really important too, because we've had some sponsors. We've done a few things where they've sponsored a stage or stuff like that. And I think at the time I was really so busy in the operation and the production of it that I didn't recognize the value as much. And then I think we could have did a better, and this was years ago, but a better job on the post end of it.
Oh, yeah.
Say, hey, make sure you get these assets.
That's right.
I make sure you got these photos.
That's right.
Make sure, even I was, a little bit more helps, right? So
Absolutely.
more names like, hey, shout out, and you're doing the plugs.
Yeah. Oh,
so,
all those things.
And they feel good about it, and that would bring them back next year.
Absolutely.
So it's not just getting the money, right, Jen? What's important?
No, it's you, first of all, you have to cultivate that relationship, and so you've got the everything that's happening before the performance or the event. Then you've got at the event, and then you have post event. There is a real life cycle of that sponsorship, and you want to make sure that you are putting in a package together and taking care of them, because right when that deal is done, you want to renew it.
Right, and after the gig, you can't wait. You can't wait till you get around to your next album.
No.
They want to see the assets. They want to see what they paid their money for.
Absolutely.
And get them while they're excited still, right? Like,
within
hey,
30 days, go back.
And
you know, make sure you have a recap. Put a recap together for them. Here are all the things you received. Here's all the things you received as extra that we didn't charge you for. You know, your good clients, give them some extra stuff through the process, because here is everything you were promised and here's what we delivered. But just so you know, we also included you in all these things over here as well. And, you know, that's just good business.
Right, and definitely can be overwhelming as a business owner, because you're focused on
It
used to
is.
doing this. Like,
It is. It's a
sell
whole
drink. Right,
other
you're like, this is
profit
outside.
center.
Right.
It's a whole other profit center that I think a lot of people don't think about. But it's interesting because it's not extra work, because like you were saying, as in operations and people producing, you guys are already putting the nuts and bolts together. The framework is there. I, as a sponsor person, I'm the one that comes in and says, okay, I want to put sponsor integration there, and there. So that's why the two sides have to work together on the ops and production, and then somebody in the marketing side. The more I know about what you're putting together on the ops on the show, the more I can say, okay, great, here's where I want to put sponsorship. Right there, I see it. The more you tell me about how you're producing the show, I guarantee you the more I'm going to be able to tell you where I can plug a sponsor.
right, you got to know what you got.
Exactly.
You have to start.
Right,
with
and it's not just all the superficial stuff. People like between sets. What's happening between sets? What are you doing? How can a sponsor be integrated between sets? Is there any kind of product placement that could happen actually on the stage? What about in the VIP area? Hennessy. Make sure Hennessy is front and center in there. You know, like there's tastings. There's all kinds of things that you can do there.
That's a lot. That's amazing. That's why you need a sponsorship expert. I mean, it really is. And like you said, at the end of the day, the business owner is going to do the business anyways.
Right.
Why not have the sponsorship support so you can expand your operations,
Exactly.
do it bigger?
Yeah.
And guess what? Sponsors attract more sponsors. Am I
That's
lying?
right. No, 100. It's everybody. It's the FOMO, fear of missing out, right? It's like, well, wait a minute, my competition is over there doing that. You know, you get people's attention for sure.
You're already promoting yourself, right? You're already getting out there trying to get people
Right.
to come
That's
here.
what I mean. The assets are there. They're already there. You're producing the show. You have operations, and you've got the marketing. You're producing the show. You have a playbook already. Now you just say, where are all the ways that I can integrate a sponsor into the plan that I already have? That's even just one way to get started. Then on top of that, later you could say, what are all the other things now we could also create? But what do you already have in the plan that you can integrate a sponsor into, and how would you do that?
I see a lot of people, I know a lot of people listening and watching, they're going to be eager for sponsors, right? And they're going to go out and do it. What happens if they pick, like, not the best choice for a sponsor? What's the best way to deal with that? If you find something it's not necessarily, like, a good fit, like, what's the best way to deal with something like that? You know,
You mean
because,
like post-event? Like you
I
signed
took the
them-
money and I'm like, you know what, this might not be the best fit for this event, but
Well, it happens.
it does. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm thinking this, right?
It happens.
You probably have
It-
stories.
I-
It sounds
it-
like you have
How do you
stories.
deal with
Believe me,
something
I've
like
had
that?
many of my ops guys and producers guy come back to me and be like, what are you doing? This makes no sense. And so what you try to do, if you already are committed and you have the partnership, you got to try to find a way that it makes sense. You really do, that it doesn't feel awkward or out of sorts. If it's really bad, then you probably need to go back and give the money back. But if there is a way that you can make it work and somehow make it more appropriate and look more aligned, it's going to take a little more work. But listen, those are lessons you learn.
That's why you got 6 to 9 months to fix it,
It
and not
is-
3 weeks.
That's right. And,
like that.
and there's maybe other assets that may not be so front and center, right? And there's maybe ways behind the scenes. But also there's a way to take a brand that at first didn't seem like a good fit, but you get some really creative people together, you can find a way to make it fit. It just takes work.
What's a pro tip that you can give somebody at home like that kind of would be a fit all? What's one piece of advice that you can share? I think you shared a lot with us, but if they're just tuning in, they're catching up on Behind the Grind. We're talking about how to get sponsorships, and what's one piece of advice you can give? That's a fit all for the starting place.
I think a starting place for anybody, any show you go to, any sporting event you go to right now, just take your eyeballs and look around and look at all the things that are being monetized. It's inspiration, but it's also just like, wow, I've been sitting here this whole time and I have been surrounded by sponsor integration and didn't know it. Yeah. And that is the right way to do it. You do want to make sure that it leaves a lasting impression, but pay attention to the shows you're going to, pay attention to the sporting events you're going to, pay attention to the marketing and promotion that you're hearing over the radio, online. It most likely has a sponsor attached to it. It will help you learn how to do this.
That's amazing.
No, it really, every time, like I said, every time I talk with Jennifer, I constantly get my mind blown. I come up with tons of ideas because, like, when you talked about the journey, and I keep trying to put myself in the mind of the kind of artist that you are, that you might be starting out. I'm thinking, okay, you've got the promotion flyer, you've got the backdrop on your stage, I'm trying to think of like what a regular artist has. You have the in-between sets.
The hard ticket, right?
The hard ticket. What else would you say is something that's really within their reach already?
Well, I mean, you've got all the content. The branded content is really what most brands are looking for right now. So what's all the content that you have surrounding the show? Are you, what about your performances leading up to? Is there sound checks that you're doing? And then during the show, grabbing that content and pushing it out.
The live segments, yeah.
All of that, all of those things are really important to include and to really make note of. It's not just these hard assets that are at the show. What are all the other things that you're doing as an artist just to round everything out? Those all have sponsor integration.
That's stuff that's within reach of an artist today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Already have.
Yes.
And then as they grow, do you have any? This is maybe it's going to be kind of interesting, but if you think of somebody who's the type of artist who's just starting out, and they're doing these assets that we've already talked about, what can they do to make sure nothing blocks them from growing, so that they don't run into problems with image, with alignment, with other things like that? Is there any thoughts on that?
Tell me what you mean.
So, like, as they grow, it's like, is there something they could do so that sponsors would, like, some larger sponsors might be like, oh, I don't know if I want to work with you because of this, or...
Well, brand fit is the first thing that a business or a client, a brand that they're going to be asked. If you start to grow, is this a good brand fit? And so your socials, your own behavior, all of that is going to matter.
That's what I was wondering.
It will matter. I have seen big brands drop off of artists because it no longer became a brand fit because maybe something they said, something they did, something they posted.
Check your history.
And right, I mean, it matters. Cancel culture matters.
I got a good question. I identified a brand. I know my assets. I think it'd be a good fit. It's my first time going out. How do I know how much money to ask for?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
It's tough, I will say. Listen, it's tough. And if, without hiring somebody to really pencil it, and when you first start out, it's probably not worth a lot if you're just getting started, right? You have to think about your brands are buying based on reach and also perception. And so getting a good idea, what are all your socials? What are all the numbers? How many followers do you have? All of those things matter. That's how you're going to create value. And also, if you can, find out what your competition. Can you get access to, if your competition is securing sponsors, what are they charging? You know, it's a good way to also do a little research on what other people within your space, in your industry, what are they getting? See
So
if you can shop it.
If you find them, are you trying to match them? Are you trying to beat them a little bit because it's your first time? Like,
I would say it's a good question. You know, I think when you're first getting started, either matching or maybe even coming in a little under
you gotta beat them
sometimes, you know?
and over deliver.
And over deliver. Yeah, I think you got to be a little careful about being too bold, because if you're getting started and you don't have a track record, you know, it's okay to go in and take a smaller amount just to get people signed on, because supply and demand, right? You want to create a perception that you know, you've got people that are out here ready to underwrite you.
It's true.
That's huge. What I often run into with artists that are doing this and starting out is you can quote them a lower price, but I always say, well, I'll give you a discount, so that the actual price when you raise it later, as you grow, you've got room. Otherwise, they're like, well, it wasn't that much before. It's like, well, I was giving you a discount.
And you taught me more value, right? So you give them the
Right.
bonus.
And I think it is important to figure out your own pricing structure. If you come up with, for all these assets, I think we're going to go out and we're going to ask for X amount of money. You start building your own rate card. So then as your own audience grows, that's why you can justify asking for more money. You have to create reasoning and justification for your own rate card.
Okay, let me
Does
play
that make sense?
It kind of does, but let me play the role of the artist who are most likely listening. What's a rate card?
You're putting together like all these assets. Here's what it's worth, right? And so you might say, here are all these assets, and you're going to put a dollar amount against each one of those, right? So you're kind of building up like a rate card. What each one of those is worth, what you think it's worth. Who knows what it is, but it's something to start with. Those assets over time are going to grow. The number of followers you have are going to grow. The number of attendees are going to grow. That means that you can then uptick that value. It's going to grow. So you have benchmarks against that. That's how you're going to be able to personally know if you can start charging more for something.
The price, yesterday's price is not today's price.
That's right.
for
I mean,
sure.
you get a baseline,
Yeah.
right? And you may find with that baseline you were wrong. So that's what I'm saying. Get an asset, get a rate card together, and you try it. You'll go out and you'll go to market and try to ask for X amount. And if you're not getting it, try lowering it, and then see if you start to get bites. Then you know you've hit the sweet spot.
And if you're too busy, that means you're not charging enough.
That's
Yeah.
That's right. If
It's
people
true.
sign
That
up
is the
quickly,
number one. That's true at gigs, and that's true. Oh,
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. You're a consultant, so you know.
no,
what
I
that's
mean,
like.
if they're signing on quickly, you're not charging enough.
Gotta up your price.
Yeah.
So Jen, this has been amazing. How to get
Yes.
sponsorship. If people want to tap in with you, they want to hire you, they want to learn about how to get sponsorship, or they want to up their game currently where it's at, how can they contact you? Where can they get a hold of you?
Just email me at Jennifer at jmorelliconsulting.com.
Can you spell that?
Yes, JENNIFER at jmorelli JMORELLI consulting.com.
Nice. That was great. I learned so much stuff. I don't underestimate yourself. Know what you have, right?
Yeah, know
Yeah.
what
Your
you have.
assets.
Yeah, your brand is worth something.
Know your audience. Know who you're talking to.
That's
If you're
right.
going to the sponsor, so you can say, "Hey,
Yeah.
your audience is similar to mine."
Yeah.
Have something you can show them,
Be a marketer. You're a
Right.
marketer. Put on your marketing hat everywhere you go.
and don't be scared.
Don't be scared.
Don't be scared.
Go
Yeah,
ask.
no.
Who cares? Go ask.
That's amazing. Randy, where can they tap in with you? Where can they get the book, Making Money from Music?
Yeah, makingmoneywithmusic.com, makingmoneywithmusic.com, and ccelearn.org is the latest thing. Well, we have online courses for this from a not-for-profit.
Man, today's been great. Thanks for
Thank you
sitting
guys.
on.
I really appreciate it. It's been
Guest
great.
host
It's
and
lot
a
of
great
fun.
guest.
I could do this all night.
We're gonna do it. Well, clear your schedule next Wednesday. We're working. Yeah, thank you so much, man. This is your boy Wally, aka Mr. Music is My Business. Thank you to my guest host, my guest today, Jen Morelli. Amazing. I learned so much stuff. This is probably the top 3 questions that I get is how do I get sponsors? So
I
we
hope
gave
you
them
help.
some
Yeah.
sauce. We gave them some stuff. They want the whole entree. They got to hit up Jen and we'll get it going, man. So make sure you follow me at Urban Grind TV on all social media. Check out our website, urbangrindtv.com is up. The revised site is raw. We got dope offerings for people, whatever they need, everything from Sirius XM, Shady 45 to BT Jams if they want to do MTV Live with their music videos. If they want to do the iTunes charts or whatever, just hit us up. 888-380-1913. Hit the lineup and get your grind up. This has been Behind the Grind. We'll see you next time. Let's go.